Here we are once again for the live post-game reaction show. The Toronto Maple Leafs have just left the ice after escaping with a 3-2 overtime victory tonight.
Yeah.
Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush channel, brought to you by the Bet Rivers Network. My name is Kyle Andrew. I'm joined once again by the incredible NHL Network analyst, Mr. EJ Hradek. EJ, just by the hair of their chinny chin chin.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Hey, listen, give them credit for finding a way to win.
Yep.
For large stretches of this game, Kyle, they were not great. But they took advantage of inexperience in overtime. Drake Batherson coming down the off wing side just throws a hope pass into the middle. Benoit stepped up, took it up the ice, dropped it for Domi, and then to his credit, Benoit went right to the net, created traffic.
Yeah.
Batherson, even on, you make a bad play if you're Drake Batherson, you come back hard, you do something. Instead, he takes a little bit of a flyby on Domi. Give Domi credit. He made a nice shot. So, that's the difference. The Leafs have been in the playoffs all these years, all these playoff games. It's not always going to work out, but they have that experience of trying to make smart plays and not. That's what a playoff game is lost in overtime. Is just a Batherson throwing it into the middle, something he'll probably learn from. Toronto goes the other way and wins the game.
We were talking off air just before we went live about, the expectations set after game one were unrealistic. And sometimes if you're going to go on a playoff run, you have to win ugly. And that's exactly what we saw tonight. There was, they were up 2-0 in the first period, but they weren't particularly dominant. And they just hung on for the rest of the game and got to overtime. And it's just what we saw. Stolarz was great once again, and he was the reason they were in this hockey game.
Yeah, nice to have good goaltending, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Anthony Stolarz has been rock solid in these first couple of games. This one was obviously a much tighter game. All four goals that were scored in regulation really were weird goals, right? Caroms, deflections. So from that standpoint, I mean, it was tight. And in the end, they make a play in overtime. But to your point, it wasn't. I didn't think they had their legs for portions of the game. Hard to know why. You get to this time of season, these things happen when teams go on long runs. Sometimes they win games that they don't really play well in. I can remember when Toronto beat Tampa in that first round series a couple of years ago. Toronto won the series. I thought Tampa outplayed them in like 5 of the 6 games. That doesn't matter. It matters that you win. And the Toronto Maple Leafs found a way to win. They had the lead. They couldn't hold on to it. But in overtime, they played smart hockey, took away the middle, and took advantage of a mistake by your opponent. And they end up with the win.
So many of these conversations now that we've had in these post-game shows have talked about the team's newfound ability to play calm in front of A-level goaltending. And you have to figure, coming out in overtime tonight, they were calm, they were composed. Of course, it's the experience you speak of, but having him in net behind them, or either of those guys really, it really has to boost them with the confidence level and their ability to play their game in overtime.
Yeah, no question. When you're playing hockey at any level, Kyle, when your goaltender is playing well, you feel good. You can play free, you can take some chances maybe, but you feel good. You feel confident. When your goaltending behind you is not great, boy, it's hard to gain the confidence necessary to win in these important games. So Stolarz was terrific again. The team helped them out. They blocked 32 shots in this game. They blocked 32 shots, only 6 blocks for Ottawa. I think that goes to the shot attempts in the game, which were one-sided, 75-43 in favor of Ottawa. But Stolarz made a lot of good saves. He made a really nice glove save on Cousins, when I think it was a minute 26 left in the game. And so he made those big saves, as he's done really for most of the year. The Leafs played, on a night when they weren't at their best. They found a way to win, and that's really the biggest thing here. And, all year, Kyle, we've done these discussions, about the Leafs. They have got the ability to be comfortable in tight games, even when things aren't going their way. And that was helpful for them tonight.
Yeah, and there's just, you see performances on the ice tonight, like another goal from Morgan Rielly, which is just, it's such good news for the Leafs on this playoff run right now, for him to be heating up on the offensive end of things like that. Tavares had another good offensive game. Just the game was different from start to end tonight. Even starting lineups, the Leafs start their fourth line versus Ottawa's third line. That's almost like you could see right from the get-go we were going to see a different version of the two teams tonight. And we did. And unfortunately for the Leafs, it wasn't their best.
Yeah, and the game was officiated differently, right? There were not as many penalties. The Leafs only had one power play in the game, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And the power play in these first two games, the Leafs have 4 power play goals in the first two games. The Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares all have points in these first couple of games. In
Yeah.
past years, we're putting, we're getting the milk cartons out. Where is Marner? Where is
Yeah.
Matthews? Where is these guys all have points. They've all contributed. So that's all off the table right now, which is good early in the playoffs.
Mhm.
They've all kind of got their cookies a little bit early. We'll see how game 3 goes in Ottawa. We'll see how it's officiated again. But one thing we know, if the Toronto Maple Leafs get power play opportunities, it's bad news for the Ottawa Senators because they don't kill penalties very well. And Toronto has already clicked 4 times in this series. So that's another thing that has gone well in these first 2 games.
Yeah, and after the trade deadline, I believe the stat is that the Leafs did have the best power play in the league, but it was their previous efforts in the playoffs that were of such great concern,
Yep.
going 1 for 21 last year. Well, they've got 4 power play goals through the first 2 games, so that's wiped off the board. The penalty
Yeah.
kill's been fine, but not great. They gave up a power play goal tonight, but again, like
Yep.
you said, it was one of those goals where it's not like some snipe from the slot. It was just, pucks all over the place and it goes in. So special teams is okay, and they won ugly, and it's completely fine. Their forecheck was, it was quite good in the first period, and then it completely disappeared for the rest
Yeah.
of the game, essentially. And that's, there's a lot more to take for Berube from this that he's going to have to correct with the team. The forecheck being one thing, the lack of legs, as you said, they looked
Yeah. Just look
tired.
that way. Yeah.
It just
Look
looked
that
that
way to
way,
me.
but there's a million reasons. Ottawa plays a different
Yeah.
game, forces them into a game they don't necessarily want to play. I do want to talk about another thing we discussed off air. It's a little out of turn right now, but the crowd was terrible tonight. compared to the other
Yeah.
night, and compared to buildings around the league like Dallas, Carolina, Winnipeg, you name it. Washington's crowd was electric last night. The crowd at the Scotiabank Arena tonight was just lifeless. I
Yeah.
don't. Do they not understand they play a role in all of this?
Well, you pay a lot of money to get
A
into these
lot of money.
games. So, I will say this. The one thing in their defense is like the Leafs did not give them a lot
Fair.
to cheer about throughout most of the game. But that said, I noticed the difference. Now, on a Sunday night game, when you don't have fans coming from work, toting in with their briefcase and their trench coat on, the guys that come from work that can afford the good tickets, who are often underneath having a drink or two while the game is going back on in the second and third periods.
Yeah.
You had a weekend crowd, and they were more lively in game 1. Now there was a lot more going on. There were 6 goals. There was a lot of scraps. So maybe that played
Yeah.
into it. But I feel the same way as you do. And then I watch those fans that are outside in Maple Leaf Square, and
Yeah.
they're just going bonkers. I almost want to say, okay, let's just let these other people out and let these people from the outside get them in there because they're going to be on the go the whole time. And one other thing, Kyle, I would say about the Leaf fan in general, and this is an observation by me. So if the fans want to beat me up, they know where to find me. But I find that teams that have had, like the Leafs have, obviously they haven't won the cup in many, many years now, as we know. And they've had this playoff heartbreak in the last several years.
Mhm.
And I think that when you have that, fans sometimes are timid to get too excited. They don't want to get their hearts
Yeah.
broken again.
It's
But
fair.
but I do think it's a new year and it's a different team this year. And maybe the team will win the fans over as we go through, and maybe they'll have to
Yeah.
earn that. But yeah, I would agree with you. I thought the crowd could have been better in this game tonight. But these are the things that don't matter in that locker room. They're just thrilled they got the victory.
No, and I mean, at the end of the day, this could be a reset. There's several, it's going to be almost a week till they're back home now, if they even
Yeah.
come back home in this round, because they're up 2-0
Yeah.
going on the road. So let's talk about that. The Leafs come out in game 1 with, by all, it was a thoroughly impressive performance on every
Yeah.
facet of the game. There was a few nitpicks here and there. Fell a little flat tonight and still have the win. So what is the mindset of both of these hockey teams heading back up the 401 to Ottawa now?
Well, for the Leafs, again, it's a team that's, the core guys and a lot of this team, they've been down this road, right? So they have a lot of playoff experience. They understand where it is. They know that, if they're smart, which I assume they are after all these, years, and Craig Berube certainly has been there, you haven't won anything. You've won 2 games, and you got to go into Ottawa and, play a really strong game 3. I think they have a lot of areas, particularly 5-on-5 play, to improve on. I
Mhm.
think 5-on-5, the Ottawa Senators have been every bit as good, if not better, than the Leafs. I think a lot will be determined throughout this series on, again, how the games are officiated. If the Leafs only got 1 power play tonight, that's good news for the Ottawa Senators. Whatever happened, the referees tonight, they saw it a certain way. They saw it differently in game number 1. Give the Senators credit for having a little bit more composure in the game.
Mhm.
So that's going to be a factor. But I think the Leafs have, they haven't played all that well. When you think about the 2 games in terms of the 5-on-5 end of it, I
Yeah.
think they can be way better. And so maybe in game 3 on the road, they'll end up maybe with their best performance of the series. And that would be great news for the Leafs. I mean, I think the 5-on-5 game has to be better. You have to help Stolarz a little. Like, you don't want Stolarz having to, come to the rescue time after time after time. He's been good. Keep protecting him, keep blocking shots. Matthews was great in the faceoff circle tonight. I think they won the battle overall. Do a lot of the details. The shift links have been really good, Kyle. I look at their shift links for the end of the game. The low end was 32 seconds with Lorenz. The
Mhm.
high end was 52 seconds with Marner. I look at that stuff in the playoffs because that tells me the team is bought in to the details, short shifts, get to the bench, get the next guys out there, and don't put your team in trouble by overstaying a shift, which you might have seen from a younger Leafs team or a more immature Leafs team. This team is kind of more bought into the whole Berube way to play. And I think, again, these are all good things. Keep taking care of the details, try to be better 5-on-5.
That's a great stat you brought up there too, EJ, because with the shift length and such with this team, it shows that they understand that they are a very complete 4 line on offense, 3 line on
Yeah.
defense hockey team, and they have trust in their teammates, starting the 4th line to getting off the ice before you're gassed. It allows them to cycle through, and they have so many
Yeah.
weapons. They're not a 1 line hockey team capable of scoring. And then back to your other point, going back to the first game of the series, I guess the story really is more than anything else. Stolarz was great, but Ottawa was very undisciplined. And,
Yeah.
heading into their own building right now, they need to maintain tonight's discipline
Yeah.
with, the dominant shot chances that they had tonight. And hopefully their home crowd for them. Obviously, Leaf Nation doesn't want that, but I would expect a version of this Ottawa team come Thursday night, much more so than the one we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think the other thing tonight we saw, Kyle, and I think you see it in the playoffs game to game, is a level of urgency. For the
Yeah.
Ottawa Senators tonight, they're down 1-0 in the series. They fell behind early 2-0. I think they really pushed and they built momentum throughout the game, and they have been good at 5-on-5. They didn't take in penalties. And so they were able to gain momentum, and they got a break in the third period. That way, I think that was the first shot on goal that they had in the period. Was like 5 minutes left, and it was the tip by Gaudette that went in. They had
Yeah.
shot attempts in the third period, but they were either blocked or they missed the net. So, the Leafs did a pretty good job in the third period, but the Senators are going to, I would imagine, the crowd will be rolling in Ottawa. They'll be looking to get back in the series. They will have that urgency. The Leafs will have to continue to play smart, be disciplined, and then try to take advantage. In the first 2 games, the Senators haven't had the lead. So that's been another part of this for Toronto, is playing with the lead makes things a little bit easier as you move through a game as well.
Yeah, and I mean, again, for a young Ottawa team like this, this is a tough game to lose. But if anything, they should take away, hey, we can hang with these guys, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
we pushed them right to the edge tonight. And I feel like no matter what, unless this series goes 6 or 7 somehow, we're going to see tight hockey for the rest of it.
Yeah,
And
I think so. I think so. And they got guys, I mean, let's face it, Stutzla's a terrific player. Obviously, Brady Kachuk, you
Big
go
goal.
through their lineup. Batherson made a tough play there in overtime, but he's a dangerous player. Cousins is, I mean, they've got depth throughout their lineup. They can play physical. They've got some really high-end defensemen with Sanderson and Shabbat back there. And Linus Olmark was better tonight. And at the end of the day, like I said, all four goals in the regulation period were all kind of weird deflections off skates,
Yeah.
and they were pretty goals that just weren't probably going to be stopped. And then you got into overtime, and Domi makes a good shot off the rush with traffic in front. So I think Olmark can probably walk away from this feeling he played pretty well as well, but he'll have to be better in game
Y-
3. And Ottawa Senators will have that urgency. Will the Leafs be able to match it and really try to put a stranglehold on this series?
Yeah, because 3-0 would be a stranglehold against a team as young as this Ottawa. I mean, it would be almost a foregone conclusion at that point, though no such thing exists in Leafland. But to your point about Allmark too, I
Yeah.
mean, just for the sake of the quality of hockey, that's a big rebound game from him tonight because he basically had no chance. One of those pucks is in. They're both
Yeah.
essentially the same goal, one more
Yeah.
intentionally than the other, and he wasn't going to stop either. So if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you at least have a lot to take away from tonight's loss. Again, a young team, a little bit ahead of development schedule, and but they're too good to just be happy to be here. If they come out like
Yeah.
this every night in this 5-on-5 play, that's the thing the Leafs will have to correct moving forward because it has been pretty even in 5-on-5 play in this
Yeah, no
series.
question. Like I said, if I had to say, I mean, I would say that the Ottawa Senators have been better in the 2 games at 5-on-5, but Stolarz has been a difference maker,
Yeah.
and the Leafs have been able to score. Certainly in game 1, they scored on the power play, the 3 power play goals. So, we'll see how things are going to turn out in Ottawa. We'll see how the game is officiated, but the good news for the Leafs is that their power play is clicking right now, and they feel good when they get a power play opportunity. So the Senators are going to have to go to the drawing board because they're going to take a penalty or two in the
Yes.
game, and you just can't allow the other team to score every time they have the man advantage.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to go without giving up a couple of power plays the
Yeah.
way the Leafs play you. Um, okay, well, let's take a quick look around the NHL. Right now, we've got Florida is up huge in Tampa, 6-2. Vegas doesn't start till 11 p.m. That's probably catch the highlights of that one, to be honest with you.
Come on,
Carolina.
stay up, Kyle. Come on.
Well, I mean, the adrenaline after these shows, I might just have
Yeah,
to
you
do
might be up
exactly.
for a while. You might be
Yeah,
up for a
yeah,
while.
well, it's going to be some good hockey out there. But I mean,
Yeah.
So Carolina went up 2-0 again
Yep.
in their series, and that's New Jersey's in a tough spot. They're injured now in the playoffs. They're adding injuries to it, and they're playing against a
Yeah.
Carolina team that's really clicking right now. They weren't as good as game 1, but they were certainly good enough to get the job done. I don't see that series going much more than 4 or 5 with New Jersey in the.
Yeah, I think New Jersey's banged up, and that's
Yeah.
problematic right now. So we'll see how that thing goes when they come back to Jersey. Again, it's a similar story. The Devils come back home. If they win their 2 home games, we've got a 2 out of
Yeah.
3. I don't know without the Hughes and Dillon didn't play tonight. Luke Hughes and Brendan Dillon. Jack Hughes is already out for the season. Siegenthaler's out of the lineup on defense. So they're missing 3 guys on defense. They did get Hamilton back at the end of the year. We'll see. But you know what? Got to focus in on if the Leafs can advance
Mhm.
Florida and Tampa tonight. I mean, that's a statement from the Florida Panthers. They got
It
their
is.
guys back in the lineup. Kachuk has already scored a couple of goals. I mean, the Florida Panthers are the defending Stanley Cup champions. They kind of struggled down the stretch.
It did.
For Leaf fans, I mean, either the Leafs have to worry about themselves and win their games and try
Yeah.
to advance. But I think it's bad news for everybody in the NHL if the Florida Panthers this is what we're going to see in the playoffs, that they're going to be the same kind of team they were last year because, they know how to do it and they've got some really good personnel when everybody's healthy, as we've seen. They won the Stanley Cup last year. So very interesting night in Tampa, and I'm sure they got to be shaking their heads. You lose in this fashion on home ice.
Yeah, I mean, the Leafs would be absolutely foolish to be looking past the Ottawa Senators right now, but
Yeah,
that's our job. And I have to
that's
say,
right.
that's our job.
That's
And
right.
Florida limped into the playoffs for a lot of reasons. But I mean, isn't the suspension up? Is it game 3 or 4?
He's got one more, like
One more.
Aaron
So
Ekblad. Aaron
2.
Ekblad has one more game after tonight. But I mean, look, they went and they won. They're winning by a
Yeah,
wide margin in this game. So they've already accomplished what you want to normally
Split.
accomplish on the
Mhm.
road to start a series, is to get a win, and now they'll try to get a second win when they get to game number 2. But it is certainly, we wondered, right? The Florida Panthers, were they able to flip the switch? But
Mhm.
they've got Kachuk healthy again. They were able to rest some of their guys down the stretch. They did that intentionally. When you've won in the past, I think the Florida Panthers, they're like, hey, listen, we'll play at Florida, we'll play in Tampa, we'll play in Toronto, we'll play out in the street. We don't care. That's what happens when you have teams that have won and have that swagger. I don't think they really care where the game is. So they rested guys. They're back to their game. They're back to their forechecking game. They're going to be a tough. If this is what we're going to see moving forward, everybody's got a bigger challenge.
A big, big challenge. I mean, if the Leafs are fortunate enough to escape the first round in 4 or 5 games, which is obviously ideal for them,
Yeah.
they have to hope that Tampa or Florida go 6 or 7 to just get as many kilometers on the clock as possible.
Yeah.
But if Florida, as you say, they're completely capable. They look like the dominant team. It's one game into the playoffs,
Yeah.
but
One
it
game.
looks like they flipped the switch. They've got the roster. They've got the goaltending. They're going to be a big, big threat.
Yeah.
Elsewhere around the conference, last night, Washington, Ovechkin scores his first overtime winner in playoffs in history.
Yeah.
But Montreal, they forced the number 1 seed into overtime. And that has to be exciting for that fan base, because if they could steal one in Washington, I expect a better Washington team tomorrow night. But, it was pretty good in performance by the Canadians.
Hey, listen, I thought down the stretch, since the Four Nations break, the Washington Capitals haven't been quite as good as they were earlier. They haven't
Mhm.
defended as well. They're missing Protas, one of their top forwards, 30-goal scorer, all even strength goals, by the way, did not score on the power play. So this is a guy 5-on-5. He's a difference maker. Um, I thought early in the game, they really pushed the Canadians around. They're a bigger, stronger team.
Yeah,
But the Canadians kind of found their way in that game, and Montembeault played well enough to give them a chance. And
very well.
that top line with Suzuki and Caulfield and Slavkovsky is as good as any line in the league right now. And they were buzzing. They got the game tied up, and just, details in overtime. We saw it tonight with a bad play by Batherson, right? That led to
Yeah,
a
yeah.
rush and a goal for the Leafs. Last night, Line has a puck at center ice, can't get it deep. Puck comes back in their end. Then they try to come out again. Line isn't able to touch the puck. It's an icing. The Montreal Canadiens are stuck in a defensive zone draw, having Demidov, who's played 3 NHL games, and
Yeah.
Line, who's like not a good defender to begin with. And we saw what happened. I mean, these are the things in overtime: details, an unnecessary icing play, a turnover that leads to an offense, a transition play, a rush chance. These are the things, and the Canadians could feel good about the game. But in the end, the Capitals come away with the win. So we'll see where it goes. But the Canadians, they've been playing well. I won't be surprised if they, give them a hard time.
Imagine that, a young goaltender in Montreal coming up big in the playoffs. It's deja vu all over again. It's just
All
it's
over
just
again.
what they do. It's just the
That's what
thing.
they do. Yeah.
And now we've got another game tomorrow night on the slate. Dallas heads over to Colorado, and that was the series that I had earmarked as possibly able to generate the best hockey in the first round. And so far, so good. It's 1-1 going back to Colorado, and some good hockey's being played there. And you have obviously a
Yeah.
tie to Dallas, so.
Yeah. The Dallas Stars, without Heiskanen and without Robertson, those are 2
Mm,
key players. I mean, imagine the Leafs playing without Morgan Riley or Tanev on the back end, and maybe Nylander up front, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's significant.
yeah,
But they really competed hard in that game last night. Again, a raised level of urgency, knowing they had to kind of find a way to get that game, and they were able to do it. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, I think it's going to be back and forth there, but I do think the Avalanche do have an advantage because no Heiskanen, no Robertson, and meanwhile, Gabe Landeskog, we thought he might have played last night. I think he probably will play in Game 3.
yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
we'll see. I don't know if he can be. He's not going to be the Gabe Landeskog he was 3 years ago, but if he can be a helpful player, that's just another plus for the Avs. So good series. Had that crazy game last night, Kyle, with the Kings and the Oilers
Yeah,
that
that's the
went
last
back and
game.
forth in the third period. McDavid was just unbelievable. And then just a fluky goal beats the Oilers late in the third period. So
Yeah,
crazy,
right
crazy
after
hockey.
they tied it. It's crazy hockey. It's playoff hockey. It's That's a tough loss for an Oilers team, but again, they went to game 7 in the final
Yeah.
last night, so they should have the fortitude to recover from that, but that's a tough loss. A fluky goal like that didn't look great, but what are you gonna do? It's just a it's just a fluttery puck that found its way to the back of the net, and
Yep. Yep.
it could have been the same thing in overtime. So, 3 games on the slate tomorrow night, pretty big. Still 6-2 in Tampa right now, and Florida's cruising to that victory. So back to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
All right.
They head up the highway. They go into game 3. They want to close this out as quickly as possible. They want to get the win in both of these games. I think that'll be a very tall order. If they're changing anything beyond trying to shore up their 5-on-5 play to go into an opposing building, what would they change to get out of this series in 4 or 5 games?
It's a good question. I would just say again, they've got to spend more time in the Ottawa Senators
Yeah.
zone because the Ottawa Senators don't defend well in their own end. They'll make mistakes, and if Ottawa's going to be able to jump out of their end and attack with speed and play, and have those really high end forwards get buzzing around in the Toronto zone, I mean that's not a formula for success for the Leafs, that's for sure. So the thing that I would be interested in if I was Craig Berube is I want pucks. If we have a chance to take the puck over the blue line and make a play, great. But you know what? Most of the time in these type of games, it's close checking. Get the puck behind that defense, finish the checks, try to create that cycle game in the offensive zone and spend some time in the Ottawa Senators zone because they are not spending enough time in the Senators zone right now. And Stolarz has been good, but you can't count on it. I think the Leafs will play a better game in game 3, more complete game in game 3 than we've seen in the first 2. Maybe I'll be wrong on that, but I think there's a lot of room to improve in different areas, especially like I said, if there's a lot of 5-on-5 time, get it to center, chip it in, make the Ottawa Senators go 200 feet, bang their defensemen around, create cycle time, create offensive zone time. They have to have more of that because Kyle, at one point tonight, I think the offensive zone time was like 14 minutes for Ottawa and like 9 minutes for
Yeah.
Toronto. That's too big a gap.
Too big of a gap. And I'd like to add to what you just said too that we're losing lights. That's okay. We're almost done. I'd like to even add to that as well that you know they've got off to a tremendously fast start in both games in the
Yep.
first period, but that takes on added importance on the road because if you can quiet what will be a very loud building early,
Yep.
that is the most important thing they can do out of the gate on the road. I feel if play the first periods, they've been good. So if they can
Yeah.
come out of the gate really good that other night, I think it's good.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
Well, I mean, I just like I said, the last thing I would say is that this is a result of the entire season of Craig Berube trying to get them to play a certain way when
Mm,
it came time in the playoffs,
yeah.
and it's not been perfect. They are up 2 games to nothing, which is the good news, but the fact that they don't panic in these close games, they've found ways to win throughout the regular season, Kyle, in close games. It served them well tonight. They didn't panic when they gave up the tying goal. They had a goaltender they count on in there, and then in overtime, they took advantage of a mistake, went down and scored. So I think it's a season-long process for a team when they change coaches and they're trying to play a different way. But we talked about it throughout the year, right? The things that happen, the successes, the little victories in the regular
Mhm.
season are things you can build on, and I think they've been able to build on that. We'll see how things go in Ottawa on Thursday night.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, and I can't, and that's why you're here, EJ. So thank you once again. Thank you once again for joining us,
You
everyone,
got it.
on another live reaction show. My name is Kyle Andrews, joined once again by the incredible NHL analyst. Please give the channel a subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and leave us some comments. I'll be responding to the
Yeah.
comments tomorrow afternoon. Join us again. We have a different team, I believe. I don't know who's on the show. I'm out of town
All
on
right.
Thursday night, but
Okay.
we're going to be
Could
live
be
after.
Pierre. Could be Pierre. You don't know.
Yeah, well, it's not me. I know that much, but we will
Okay.
definitely be live here on the Toronto
All
Sports
right.
Plus channel, brought to you by the Bet Rivers Network. Thank you once again for joining us. See you after Game 3.